welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad you are here. And this is going to be the last video for today. So I definitely glad that you're here. If you are new to the channel, welcome. My name is April, and I like doing reviews, recaps, and worthy news. So I am just excited to kind of get to this story because it is quite a unnerving story, to say the least, the contents of it. And I'm curious if you heard of this story. I just happened upon it, and I just thought, I want to talk about this a little. So I will say that may I give a bit of a trigger warning because it is very uncomfortable, some of the things that is presented and shared in the story. Nevertheless, it's really an important one to cover, and because there's so many people who are affected in situations such as these, and it's just unnerving and so unfortunate to see something of such injustice occur. So yeah, you can see what it says there at the bottom. We're talking a conviction overturned after 43 years. 43 years, a lifetime. So I go ahead and just sit back, and if this is a familiar story to you, let me know in the comment section below. I would certainly love to hear your thoughts about it, because it's kind of a crazy story, like so unfortunate that something even like this took place. And unfortunately, you hear about stories like this happening all the time. So yeah, why don't we go ahead and just get on into it, right? Pull this up. All right, this story is being brought to us. Oh, give me 1 second. You gotta love technology, especially when it's hot. I don't know, it just seems to really want to act up. All right, so let's go ahead and pull that back up. Okay, so this story was shared in People, and we're just going to go ahead and dive on in. It shares that woman's conviction for 1980 unaliving is overturned, and judge believes that the cop did it. The judge called Sandra Hemi, incarcerated for 43 years and still behind bars, the victim of a manifest injustice. Sandra Hemi has spent more of her life behind bars than outside of them. But a circuit court judge in Missouri now says the woman who suffers from mental illness should have never been incarcerated, and that a now deceased local police officer was never properly investigated and should have likely instead been charged with the 1980 unaliving. John Ryan W. Horseman overturned Hemi's capital murder unaliving conviction in a Friday, June 14th order obtained by People, calling the 64-year-old woman who has spent the last 43 years in prison the victim of a manifest injustice. It would be difficult to imagine that the state could prove Miss Hemi's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, the judge wrote in his decision, adding that he found her innocence to be clear and convincing. Unbelievable. Let's continue. If exonerated, Hemi would be the longest serving woman known to be wrongfully convicted in U.S. history. Jane Putcher, Hemi's Innocence Project lawyer, tells People, there was no motive for Hemi to unalive Patricia Jeske, a St. Joseph, Missouri librarian, according to the judge. Putcher says the two women had likely never even met. There were no witnesses claiming Hemi was at the scene of the crime, and there was no forensic evidence trying her to the brutal unaliving, per the 118-page order, which went on to say, in fact, everything that was forensically tested excluded her. The only thing prosecutors had when they convinced a jury of her guilt was the woman's confession, which her lawyers have called in court documents wildly contradictory, uncorroborated, and factually impossible. Unbelievable. Investigators' intensive questioning began at St. Joseph's State Hospital, where she was so heavily medicated that she was unable to even hold her head up and was restrained and strapped to a chair, according to Innocence Project, who took up her case decades after Hemi had confessed. The judge ruled last week that her inconsistent, disproven confession made while she was in psychiatric crisis and physical pain is the only evidence linking Ms. Hemi to the crime. But there was someone in town, a St. Joseph police officer, who the judge says was never properly investigated, despite what the judge called substantial and objective evidence against him. Michael Holman had in his possession Jeski's distinctive wishbone earrings, as well as her credit card, attempting a $630.43 charge for photography equipment the day investigators found her body. Hairs at the crime scene were also consistent with his own, per the judge. The jury was aware of the credit card and the hairs, but they were not told about her earrings or about the young officer's extensive criminal behavior, what the judge noted included repeated home burglaries, crimes of dishonesty, and stalking offenses. Numerous witnesses reported seeing Holman's pickup truck nearing Jeski's home the evening she was unalived, and while Holman eventually admitted he was in the area around the time of her unaliving, his explanation for why was ultimately determined to be a lie, all of which the jury did not hear, the judge said in his order. Holman, who passed away in 2015, was never charged with Jeski's murder. The judge said his fellow officers failed to seriously investigate Holman as a suspect. Instead, police returned to St. Joseph State Hospital, where the year before they had secured a conviction against another psychiatric patient after coercing a confession from a 24-year-old Melvin Lee Reynolds, who was later exonerated, per the Innocence Project. Some of the same officers also took on Hemi's case. Ooh-wee. As recently as January, the Missouri Attorney General's office argued to uphold Hemi's conviction. But even agreeing to such an evidentiary hearing in an innocence case is rare in Missouri, the Kansas City Star previously reported. Also in the state, Kevin Strickland was similarly incarcerated for 43 years before he was ultimately exonerated in 2021 of a triple unaliving in Kansas City, Missouri. The former Attorney General opposed Strickland's exoneration efforts, as well as that of Lamar Johnson of St. Louis, Missouri. Per the newspaper, Johnson had spent 28 years behind bars before his conviction was overturned. I'm sensing a pattern. How about you? The judge has ordered that Hemi, who remains in custody at Chillicothe Correctional Center per her online incarceration records, be released within 30 days of his order, unless prosecutors go to trial within that time frame. Missouri's Attorney General Andrew Bailey did not respond by email or text confirming if prosecutors plan to retry the case. Oh my gosh. I mean, your thoughts. Please share them down below. I will share mine. This is such a travesty. And, it's so unfortunate because we do hear so many situations that are similar in nature as far as having where a person has basically said they had done something and it really came out to be that did not occur. And there always seems to be some kind of extenuating circumstances associated with these, false situations of placing them in a place of wherever a particular crime has occurred. And this is awful. This really is awful. And the amount of time spent, we're talking lifetime, for an individual that, all virtually stating in the judge's court order, did not commit. And this is why we're at the position of overturning. And the thought of someone wanting to not move forward and wanted to be a stopgap in the process of someone who has been deemed innocent of situation, it's just really unbelievable and unbelievably sad. And of course, with the situation being such that the judge believes that it was a cop that actually did it, and now that cop is no longer alive, he's not able to be fully investigated and really brought up and dealt with in court for his day in court. So where's the justice in this situation? It seems to be quite a how you say, a pattern of certain individuals from a certain location being convicted of these said things, and then coming to find out that they were not even a part of the situation, that they were, you know, not guilty of those particular crimes. And the fact that these people have spent so much of their lives in the system like this for a crime they commit, it's just truly a travesty. I came across this story and I just was like, my goodness, there was a TV show a few years ago that came out on ABC, and it was actually, I want to say it was like a kind of a series that lasted for maybe a few weeks. And it was riveting because the story or the show, I forget the name, it might have been called Incarcerated or Exoneration or something like that, to that extent. If you are familiar with what I'm talking about, drop that down in the comment section and let me know if I got the name right. But basically, they were individuals who were convicted of crimes and were spending life in prison. I do believe that there may have been someone that actually had the D penalty, and they were trying to fight to get their convictions overturned, get their sentences, vacated, because they said they were innocent. And when you listen to some of these stories in full, it gives you great pause, especially for a situation where you're actually going to go into moving into the D penalty, to take a second look at what is going on. I don't believe that any of the cases, to my knowledge, if those cases, any of them has gotten overturned, if they've got new hearings or not. I believe there were forms of innocent projects that were helping and assisting one, if not maybe all of them, or some of the individuals that were featured in that story, in that series a few years back. But it was just, you were looking at the evidence that was provided and you're like, how did you come to be with this person? But yet in those particular situations, they're actually the person that was associated, and a couple of them, they were a part of the overall event, but was able to either not be convicted of anything, or convicted and out within a couple of years, but not convicted of the actual crime, where it looked like it was more in line with that. And for whatever reasons, investigations were not being done into that situation. And it was just such a travesty. And, it just goes to show you, these things do happen. And I'm sure there's tons more stories like this. We hear about it on the news quite often, way too much, obviously, where people are, losing so many years of their lives to a system situation for something they did not commit. And the fact that the judge actually feels it very strongly that a particular person, not let alone someone who's supposed to be protecting and serving, was the person that was involved and actually committed the crime, it's flabbergasting to me. So, of course, we'll have to say alleged, I guess, for the cop situation, because he's never going to ever be able to be investigated to see if things line up that be the case. So, at this point, there really isn't any justice for the victim, is there? Because, their family and the people that are associated with them are now having to relive the situation in a way with no real resolve. And that's very unfortunate. And my heart and thoughts go out to them, because this is just unbelievable, to say the least. And, there is no way that the person can be brought back, of course, but that's not really the point, is it? The point is that when someone is, when you're in a situation where you want someone to be convicted and associated with a crime, you want it to be the person that actually did that crime. What good is it that you have someone who's innocent is sitting there dealing with a crime situation that they didn't commit? I mean, what are we doing here? So, I would imagine the prosecution has their reasons as to why they wanted to stand in the middle of moving forward with the judge's, process, or moving forward for where the end result was, that this lady is now being released. But this is definitely one of those things that if you want to do a deep dive, you most certainly could, and maybe get some of the information associated with it. I just think that this was such a travesty, and if all as the things have been stated in the court documents, if all is true as what has been assessed, which it has been made the decision of, this woman now gets to go home. And I don't even know to what extent or level does she even know exactly what was going on, considering that she suffers from mental illness and the state of what they share in the story of how she was at the time of this so-called confession. So yeah, it's just very disheartening. And I just thought that it was something that, it was interesting to read about and just be aware of, that these things do happen. And I was just curious if you had saw the story yourself and what your thoughts were. So like I said, this was a doozy, and definitely in the Law and Order-esque area of worthy news. But I mean, my goodness, this was just such a travesty on so many levels. And at this point, we just say prayers out to all those who have been involved. There's a lot of injustice that needs to be, handled and done, and things to be unwritten that were written. And maybe this is the start of that particular situation. Clearly, in this particular case, this particular location, there have been others that have been convicted and had to go through the exoneration process, but again, lost. Another one of them 43 years of his life, and another one 28 years of his. And just because someone is suffering from mental illness does not mean that they should just be, sent off into a situation that they had nothing to do with. And the fact that in this particular case, there's thing that these two women never even met. I mean, I don't know exactly where, Sandra Hemming was at the time exactly, but there's nothing that connects her to the situation. But yet they've had evidence that was there, even the evidence that wasn't, placed in the for the jury to hear about. There was still the evidence of his hairs and something else. Let me go back and see what they said here. Because I'm like, that wasn't worth a real good check in to see, because that is, where they say that basically, first of all, in the former police officer's possession, he had the victim's wishbone earrings and her credit card. But what was, an attempt on that credit card at that, which there probably was no real connection with her. And then look at the crimes that he did commit. So not having that information, even just the full set, is what put this situation sent in the direction that it did. But I would wonder, how would you have come to the case of not even wanting to look further into the situation when what was found was hairs of his. Best to say they did find the bodies, attempting a charge for the crime, but the day investigators found her body, hairs at the crime scene were also consistent with his own. So if they knew that they had the hairs that was consistent with the individual, that wasn't a reason to try to look at things a little bit deeper, because maybe we may not have the right person. I mean, unbelievable story it is. It's very sad. It's such a tragedy. I am glad that Ms. Sandra Hemming has been able to get her day in court and has been able to successfully overturn her situation by court orders. Of course, there is also the element of exoneration that needs to be taking place. The judge has already made it clear he wants her out of here within 30 days of that order, which I believe that happened on the 14th of June, which was that Friday. And he says that it would, of course, her side of attorneys, which thank goodness that she was able to have the team that she's had, because the Innocence Project, just through watching a lot of shows that I've watched, they do a lot of good work. They have helped a lot of people. So this was such a good thing for her to be able to have such a dedicated team to help her, get through this process and then be vindicated at the end of it all. Now, sometimes, you'll have individuals who may still think that someone's guilty just because somebody said that they were, and could have all the evidence and information sitting right in their face, and they still will stay stuck on the fact. I hope that is not something that Ms. Susan will have to continue to deal with in the future, or Sandra, would have to deal with in the future, because That would be a continued travesty on a situation that she clearly, according to the court papers, has nothing to do with it for all intents and purposes. So, quite a story, and not one that I come across too often in my readings, but definitely did hear. Like I said, there's been a few stories that came out last summer on 3 or 4 different individuals. It was on CNN, big splats about situations where they had been convictions overturned. They weren't even there. It had nothing to do with the situation. Actually had a person in one of those cases, I think, associated in the midst. And so, yeah, it was just an unfortunate story, at least. But I definitely would like to know your thoughts. Your thoughtful, caring thoughts, of course. Of course, prayers and all to the family of absolutely, because where's the justice, right? Where is the justice in that? With that, I think that will wrap up this particular story and this video. And yeah, I hope that you do have a great rest of your evening, because it's about late now. But I thank you so much for tuning in. And of course, I really do appreciate all of your viewing support. And of course, if you enjoyed the video and just getting the information, I would so appreciate a like on your way out if you haven't already left one. And if you are new here and you have sat through and listened to the video, I hope you do decide to subscribe and be a part of the family. I talk about all kinds of non-celeb and celeb stories here. I like to craft nicely under worthy news, and definitely recaps and reviews of TV shows and documentaries and such. So, have some of those things already on the platform, and you'll be seeing some more here in the future. So also too, if there's any shows that you are looking at right now, whether it be Netflix, if you're checking out the Lifetime Gypsy Rose story, let me know in the comment section. If you would like me to recap, review any of those, I'd be more than happy to. I'm actually watching the Gypsy Rose story myself. I think it is quite another situation that is very unfortunate circumstances that befell everyone involved, obviously, but it is a interesting documentary series to see. So if you're interested in doing a recap review, some conversation about that and lending your thoughts, I'd be more than happy to oblige. So just let me know in the comment section. So with that, I think I'm going to bid you adieu. I hope you have a great evening, and I believe I will be back tomorrow. So make sure you have those notification bells on so you do not miss my next set of videos. And of course, I have dropped many others before this one, so if you haven't had a chance to go back and check them out, I hope you will find some time to do so. And make sure you give a like on those videos too if you enjoyed it, and I would so appreciate that. So yeah, I think that'll about do it. Take care. Bye.